Hello, listeners. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Michelle Mendoza, who is the CEO of Hydration Room, where she oversees 35 plus IV and injection therapy clinics in Southern and Northern California. Overall, she has a goal to provide effective therapies to help patients optimize their health. It's preventative wellness and strives, and the organization strives off of passion, purpose, and people. Now, before joining Hydration Room, Michelle was most recently VP of Stores for UBreakIFix by Asurion, a network of 700 stores focused on technology repair. Michelle also spent 16 years leading operations at Weight Watchers, where she learned that being part of a wellness organization grounded in purpose, full of passion, empowered by people, I see that through line there, made her feel whole. So I really enjoyed the conversation today with Michelle, focused on values, how to really truly build a career around what matters most to you, what feels right. And a little hint, kind of also have to be courageous. So I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. What does it truly mean to be a leader? Welcome to The Executive, a podcast that highlights the career journeys, struggles, successes, and day-to-day experiences of leaders. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Ritter, bringing over 10 years of experience as a leadership and career coach, L&D consultant, and healthcare executive. My mission is to guide leaders towards creating a career they can love. Thank you for listening. Now let's hear from the executive.
The organization that I work for really reinforces that wellness, that kind of taking care of yourself. And that can look like and feel like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But to me, it looks like waking up early. It looks like moving, ideally running, which I did this morning. I got a 6-miler in. And then really kind of dedicating myself to growing and building the wellness business that I'm in, and creating space for communities to access IV and injection therapy in a way that works for them, in a safe, caring, comfortable environment. So, yeah, I think right now what's resonating is, I want my daughter to continue to be well. I'm grateful for almost 15 years of life, and I want to continue to be there for her. And so that means taking care of myself, and that means also, investing myself in the things that I believe in, and that's the company that I work for.
Wow, it sounds like you've found a home that aligns with not just your values, but the place that you are in life with your family and yourself. Like how intentional was I'm kind of like, is it the chicken or the egg? Like what happens with
Mm.
the leader that finds a job that seems to align like that?
I think I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. I think what I do know is I have found a beautiful intersection for myself in working for a wellness-driven brand and, um, being present for my family. And that certainly has not always been the case in my career. I started my career off really leaning into career. I started off as an investment banker at JP Morgan, and then pivoted, kind of left, and probably one of the best career decisions I've made was to leave something that wasn't serving me, and kind of stumbled into, so chicken or egg, more like stumble into Weight Watchers. And I spent 16 years at Weight Watchers, started as an operations analyst, and worked my way up into running both franchise global operations and company owned operations. And I think what I learned about myself there was one, I took a risk. I left something that I thought I needed to do. I thought I should do, which was graduated from Ivy League school, and what I had learned there was go into investment banking, go into management consulting. That's the path to success. And while that is a path to success for some, it wasn't a path that defined my success. And so I took a risk, I pivoted, and I found success, which was both success in career growth and success in personal fulfillment in Weight Watchers. And I think the why behind that was this kind of coalescing of Weight Watchers was, and I think it still is, a place where passionate people are working for a purpose-driven organization and getting things done, delivering results via people, not via, there are some product offerings, but at the end of the day, it's the people that make the difference. And those three things for me have always just felt like home, have always resonated, have always just, I don't have a better way to describe it than it feels right. It feels safe. It feels like a fit. And that same feeling is what I feel right now at Hydration Room. Leading it, being the CEO, I'm a first time CEO. And what I feel at Hydration Room is, again, that coalescing, that kind of Venn diagram magic of it is fueled by passion, people who are passionate about wellness, specifically preventable wellness, prevention-based wellness, tied to people who want to leave the world a slightly better place. So purpose-driven, mission-driven. And then at the end of the day, we are absolutely a service business. We rely on our frontline employees, our registered nurses, and our tremendous wellness coordinators to deliver an experience that's full of care, that's full of quality and safety and cleanliness. And at the end of the day, that just seems to fit. That's the right puzzle piece for me. So I don't know, back to your question, I don't know, chicken or egg. To me, it's a feel, and I think leading through feel personally and professionally has been something that when I listen to my gut, when my mind is connected to my heart, is connected to my gut, then I know I'm on the right path for me.
Mhm. Passion, purpose, people. As in a leader in an organization that is fueled by passion, is purpose driven, and service based, so that cares for people, understands that people are the foundation. I I mean, that has to be like your role is to sustain it, to to I don't know, increase it, to grow it, basically to impact it, to protect it. What have you learned over the years around maybe some of the threats to those three incredible and important pillars? Or maybe you've actually experienced protecting it from some of those threats, or maybe you've experienced just something that really helped sustain it or increase that culture.
The the kind of the thing that immediately came to mind as it relates to whether it's honoring, whether it's growing, whether it's protecting those three things, I think step one for me, or something that definitely is part of kind of the playbook for me, is communication. Um, and that's communication at all levels. That's communication and listening to what the voice of the customer, that's listening to the voice of the employee or the team member, that's listening to your team. And that's also communicating what you're doing, but more importantly, why you're doing it, and doing it in a way that gives people a chance to receive it in a way that makes sense to them. And so, I think the real kind of tier of communication, whether that's kind of upward through the organization, whether that's uh, out through the organization, or whether that's across the organization, I think there's real magic in protecting what you do, how you do it, and extending that by communicating the why, what you're doing and why you're doing it. So that's been something that, I've leaned on. And I think that resonates. I think that gives people an understanding of what's happening, and also a stake in and some accountability in why it's happening. So, I think that to me is kind of the pillar of how to protect it, how to invest it, how to cultivate it. It is to really just speak it again, share small examples, microcosms that then end up becoming macrocosms. I think there was a in Weight Watchers, one of the things that we taught our leaders, right? So we held 16,000 meetings a week across the United States, run by these incredible leaders who had lost weight and who had kept it off. And one of the tips we told them as they were sitting in front of, rooms of uh, 30, 40, 50 people who were like-minded in that they wanted to be well. They wanted to invest in their wellness. One of the concepts that we used was kind of the spotlight floodlight. And the spotlight was you kind of take an individual situation and you break it down into what that individual is doing, and then you find a way to use that individual situation to connect it to the broader group. So an example for me personally was like, I struggle with uh, effectively keeping peanut butter in the household. I can walk out with a spoon of peanut butter and not count how many spoons I have, and half a jar later, I don't know what happened to the peanut butter. But peanut butter doesn't, kind of doesn't do it for everyone. It's not a food that other people potentially overindulge in. And so the magic of Weight Watchers was it taught me to use my individual example, but then to figure out how to connect it to the broader, in that case, meeting or class or workshop. In the case of an organization, right, take an employee example or a patient example or an individual example and connect it to the broader organization. And so, that looks and feels a little bit like, my goodness, does anybody else struggle with a food that you just, kind of can eat without counting or watching or being cognizant of what you're doing? At Hydration Room, that's taking a successful patient outcome, someone who comes in with a migraine and feels tremendously better later. Who else has done that for patients countless times a day? And how do we honor that? How do we celebrate that? How do we communicate it? And how do we then continue to reinforce those magical moments? So, I think for me, it's the real protective part of this, the real cultivating part of it, the real connective tissue is communication.
Communication, the why and the what, and finding those stories that you can take from individual and specific to broad to kind of connect with that passion and that purpose and to highlight the people.
Yep.
If an executive is listening or just a leader of a group and they're wondering, okay, so I get the idea, but where do I find the stories? Have you found a good way over the years to source a couple of those in your role or in the organization?
I'm currently using two ways to source stories. I think there's a tremendous number, but these two really work for me. We have a widget that sends up all of our patient reviews, customer reviews, Google, Yelp, internal customer service emails every day. And so, as the leader of the organization, for me, it's tremendously important to keep a pulse on how people feel about us. Did they have a good experience? And ideally, right, like, would they recommend us to a friend? So really kind of the inputs to customer satisfaction and ultimately net promoter scores or NPS. I get that in my inbox. That's how I start my day. It comes in my inbox 6 a.m. every day. And one of the first things I do is I get a cup of coffee and I read those reviews. And I sit with them and I look at what location was there and I look at what nurse or wellness coordinator serviced that patient. We have a whole process by which then those reviews are shared positively across our organization. We also have a process to address patients who have an experience that may not be right for them, or one where there's dissatisfaction. So I also trust that my team will handle anything both positive and concerning directly with the affected team members and with the patient. So we've built a really strong loop there, but that connects me deeply to ultimately the pulse and the rhythm of our business. The other thing that I really enjoy doing is being a customer myself, visiting locations. I think there's real importance and validity and just magic in being present in the locations that you run, the clinics that you operate, the business that you that you're in charge of or that you're a part of. And so that looks like and feels like, I get an IV every month as a patient. I have brought my daughter in to get both a migraine IV and a cold and flu IV when she wasn't feeling well. I brought my husband in to get a cold and flu IV. My mom's come in, right? So I've extended that to people who are connected to me in a, closely. Um, but also I do it for myself. I do it to see the team, to meet new team members, to connect to the product, to remind myself what we do and why we do it. And so those are the microcosms, those are the stories that then I'm able to use in weaving through kind of this fabric or thread of consistency across, right? I can tell the team that we've got a 4.8 Google review, or I can tell the team about one specific situation that came through on a 6 a.m. email that I read from a patient in Monrovia. Or I can tell the team about my specific experience and I can share what I loved about it. I can share what I want to change about it or what didn't work well and how that maps to our organizational priorities. So I really do think that these kind of individual moments, as long as they're representative of broader themes that you're seeing, and you don't fully rely on the qualitative, can really help tell that story and reinforce your own passion, your own purpose, and remind you that you're running an organization that ultimately thrives because of its people.
And it's hard to, I imagine, be connected to the passion or to the purpose or to the people if you don't create those connections. It sounds like you have those branches to connect with the day to day, from your own personal experiences to just the quantifiable metrics that you receive, to then following up in in regards to those like feedback loops to kind of
Right.
follow the threads, to get more information. That is incredible, really is. And when you think about the culture of your organization, you're very much focused on positively impacting the health of the world. It's, I imagine, it attracts people that want to do good and want to help in the prevention kind of wellness space. What are some of the things that maybe even for you that get in the way, that clog the pipes of the passion or the purpose?
Pipe clogging is real. And I think it happens to every organization. It happens to every leader, right? I think on a personal level, there are days where you show up with more or less motivation, right? There's days where your calendar is jam packed and your to-do list is a mile long and there's no way you're getting through that. And that alone can be a clog, right? A mental clog. Um, I think from a professional side, we at Hydration Room, I think have this mentality where we are in our growth phase right now is kind of step one is we make it exist and then we make it good. And getting it out there and working it and refining it with our team's input has been tremendously helpful to us. That also means that we're putting stuff out there that may not be fully baked, that may require a lot of input, that may um, be far from perfect, be far from seamless execution operationally. And so, I think that comes with a lot of transparency to our team of this is our philosophy and we're relying on you to help us make things better. It also relies on us kind of hiring and training and performance managing people to understand that that's the path we're taking right now. That's the stage of growth that we're in, and that's the kind of setting we're in. This is not a um, perfectly optimized organization where you're optimizing for margin cents on the dollar. This is let's deliver a great experience. Let's learn from when we don't. Let's treat people with care. Let's own our mistakes. Let's own what is working and what's not. And let's talk about that transparently. And let's build paths towards fixing it. And that may be a path to fixing it today. And that may be a path to fixing it 6 months from now. So I think there's, to kind of address the clogs, they very much exist. We're putting out things that aren't fully operationally baked. And our team gets frustrated with that, right? There's a lot of change that's happening. There's a lot of growth that's happening. But I think that the more you can be transparent about where you are as an organization, where we are in our kind of growth curve, what we need from our team, and most importantly, what we commit to doing as a result of what we hear from our team. And that commitment can be a soft commitment. That commitment can also be a hard commitment. But it's delivering on those commitments. And I guess it comes back to communication and creating those feedback loops where people feel safe to share, heard, right? We meet people where we're at, and we ultimately do something with it. And that can simply be acknowledging it. That can simply say, that can be also a response that is great idea. We're not ready yet, and here's why, or that has to go on the shelf for these 3 reasons. But I think making people feel seen and making people feel heard as you work through clogs has been something that has been just tremendously helpful to me, because then they're seen as authentically them and as a human, as a value add to the thing that we're all collectively trying to do.
I once worked at a company where we were discussing how to create greater engagement and an all hands. And I was very much about kind of um, how do we embody the values that we have here around transparency and communication, etc. And so we were creating like an open forum. And I remember there was one moment where it was an executive that were like, we can't ask that. Do you know what they're going to say? And it was like, well, that's the purpose. The
Yeah,
purpose is to give them the opportunity to say the things that maybe we're afraid that they're going to say, and then treat it with respect and openness and care to build that credibility, to show that we are who we say we are. It's hard
it
for a
is.
company.
It is hard. And when they're going to say something that you don't like, that you can't address, that you can't fix immediately, that goes against the cores of who you are, that's a really tough spot. I prior to joining Hydration Room as the CEO, I spent some time at UBreakIFix, which was a tremendous organization. Um, and we we worked through kind of stabilizing the organization. We worked through building stronger connections and relationships with our franchisees. But we also worked through a lot of what you just described, which was taking our values and figuring out how to advocate for our particular line of business, how to advocate for ourselves as professionals, as part of a larger organization. And there were moments where we were met with wonderful ears and a warm heart, and there were moments where we were not. And I think those moments where we were not were really kind of opportunities for us to, and for me as an individual, you know, as a leader for the team and also an individual employee, to really think through, like, is there a different way that I could message this? How can I be heard? How do I share my message in an effective way? So I think it's a two-way street of um, creating space to be heard, living the values, and also calling people out when the values um, aren't being lived in a way that is authentic to you, but also enables those that need to hear it a space and a time to hear it and to reflect on it.
I think a lot of us in our careers have experienced some sort of negativity at some point for sharing a perspective or an idea or giving feedback, and that tends to then create a little bit of, I don't know, baggage, weight, or fear. And as a leader, you can role model the fact that it's safe. And harder said than done, because you're going to disappoint people along the way no matter what. There's generally going to be disengagement. I remember rolling out performance management processes and just warning all the executives, like, no matter how good the review is or how bad the review is, you're generally going to get a dip in productivity and engagement. And that's okay. It takes time. People need to process things. Um, but yeah, if you can create that feedback loop, communicate transparently, and focus on those pillars of passion, purpose, and people, I imagine the hydration. I mean, it's probably an incredible place to work. Sign me up. Let's go to the hydration room. I'm
It
in.
is. It's a great place to work, and I think it's also, you know, this is I'm coming into something, right? And I think there's also magic in honoring what has existed previously. And, that also, that is a mix of anchoring to the mission statement, anchoring to the values of an organization. And I think anytime you can use that as your anchor, as your individual why, and make sure that you're living that and you're calling people out when they're both doing it, right? Living the values and when they're not. Um, that to me is kind of it's the easiest thing to anchor to. It's basically saying, look, I've signed up to work for an organization that has said it displays these values, and I'm seeing them today, and that's awesome. And so I want to celebrate it. Or I'm not seeing them today, and I'm concerned, and here's why, and here's how I'm not seeing them. Um, so I think wherever you are, you know, on your journey as an individual, really, you know, as you join an organization, as you reflect on engaging and staying at an organization, reread those missions and values and use them. Use them to ensure their behaviors that you're displaying, ensure that you celebrate them when you see them, and that you call people out when it's not being shown in a way that resonates for you.
Yeah, the celebration when you see them is key. It's like the highlight reel, positive reinforcement.
Yep.
I've so often seen values just misused in organizations. So, like, if you have a value, you define it, you promote it, and then people just curate it towards what they want it to be. And then all of a sudden, now you have a culture that has like negative values, promoting negative behaviors. How else? I mean, do you have any examples or tips on something that you feel has been most effective or just unique in promoting or reinforcing values in an organization, other than what you've already shared so far?
In terms of promoting or reinforcing values, um, I think it's that those individual moments like I've described. I think it's also when you have, I've had the opportunity to figure out how to communicate to a larger group of people, right? I've had the blessing and the hardship of standing on stage in front of, hundreds of franchisees who had varying, degrees of care and desire and positivity towards an organization. I've had the pleasure of standing on a stage, um, you know, uh, where you're describing yourself as a new leader to an organization. Um, I think, I think really kind of anchoring yourself to what those values are, what the mission is, revisiting those, talking about them, reinforcing them, and then telling kind of personal anecdotes, right? How you see them coming to life. Um, that those have been moments that have not only helped me navigate kind of newness in an organization, it's also helped me really check myself and make sure it's a place that I want to continue to lead or be at or be on a stage of. Um, I'd say, for me, they're a mix of like a guiding light. They're a mix of something you can, leverage as a newbie, and I think something you should check in on to make sure that it's still something, that mission, those values still resonate with you. They still show up in your day to day connections with teammates, in your, on your executive team, and um, they fit who you are as a human being.
There might be some leaders that are listening to this and like, okay, yeah, yeah, values, yeah, but I still got to make money. I still got to grow the business, and like, isn't it more important to just kind of hit that bottom line? So then, how have you noticed values playing a role in kind of business results?
Yeah, to me, values are actually the start of behavior change, and behavior change is actually what then drives in a service driven business what drives revenue and what at the end of the day, helps grow a business, right? So let's go from the soft stuff, the values, to the hard stuff, right? The bottom line and the top line. So, at Hydration Room, um, we've got 7 values. One of them is care. And you can take care a whole bunch of different ways, right? Care can be the care that you give to a patient, care can be the care that you give to a teammate, care can be, when someone gets an IV, we offer to bring them a cup of water or a cup of warm tea. Um, and those are all moments of care. And what resonates to one person in that caring moment, um, then affects how they feel about their experience, which then affects how they interact with the brand as soon as they walk out of your 4 walls, right? So part of the magic of Hydration Room, which is still, very much a business that people don't know about. People don't know the benefits of IV or injection therapy. Athletes have used this for a long time. It's what you get in a hospital when you're first being kind of admitted. Is the first thing they do is they give you an IV, they give you fluids, and rather than go to a hospital, we can do that, in communities all across Southern California, and we're branching out into Northern California shortly. And it's the fastest and most absorbent way to get vitamins and antioxidants into your system. People don't know what that is, right? And so as we not only drive brand awareness, as we not only work to help educate the general consumer on kind of what an IV is, whether or not they patient room, if we can have moments where care is displayed in a way that resonates with the person that has made the decision to walk into our 4 walls, that then is shared as a, hey, like, Ben, I noticed you're sick. Like, we have a cold and flu IV that could help you, knock out whatever you're feeling and keep you healthy. That then creates a touch point, a repeatable, a referable moment. Um, Now we have ways to measure that, right? We have a refer a friend program. There's all sorts of ways to kind of codify that. But to me, those are the behaviors that I'd want to see when I went in and performance manage and coach someone and observed them as an employee. I'd want to see care as the through line in how the wellness coordinator treats that patient and how the nurse treats that patient and how that patient feels and what they describe as their experience. So to me, the value of care really is the impetus to, did that patient have a good experience, right? So customer satisfaction. Then ultimately a net promoter score, which is, would that patient refer a friend to Hydration Room, which is really how the business has been built, because we are still in the early stages of people's consideration and wellness. And that then gets the next customer in our doors. And so if we can create that repeatable value display at a patient level, at a micro level, numerous times in that patient's 45 minutes within our doors, then we've won. Then the value translates to revenue. And I can see that through customer satisfaction scores. I can see that through our Google stars, which then affects search engine optimization. I can see that in referrals. And I can see that in the patient's willingness to come back to us. And so that's how, to me, a value translates into top line.
Such a good definition of how values lead to everything: performance expectations, role clarity, branding, service delivery, customer experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, do people buy your product?
Right.
And do they buy it repeatedly? And do they talk about your product in a
Yep.
positive way? And so we've talked about values for the organization and how it kind of aligns with you personally. And I'd like to then kind of go maybe a little bit back in time. And when did values, or at least this type of organization, really become kind of the guiding light towards how you want to show up in your career?
It's a great question. I think early on in my career, like I said, I jumped into investment banking. I was one of 2 females in an office, one of 2 female bankers in an office. it was something that I thought I should do to grow my career. And I learned a tremendous amount. I learned how to, analyze a business. I learned the importance of debt and equity. I made great friends. I think I was missing I didn't feel like me, I guess is kind of what it comes down to, right? And so I was working 120 hours. I was prioritizing work over things that were very important to me, people that were very important to me. I was prioritizing work over my own health. And, I think at 22, I made a courageous decision. And I think that comes when your values no longer align with the actions that you're taking. And so, I made the decision to leave. I left LA and moved to New York and joined an organization that, just I didn't know much about Weight Watchers. I thought about it, as many do, as, my mom's or my grandma's Weight Watchers. And at 22 years old, I kind of stumbled into the things that we've been talking about, a place that was full of passion, a place that was full of purpose, and a place where it valued the behaviors that people displayed, and that those behaviors drove outcomes tied to business performance. I think it took me a few years, honestly, to kind of get my head around this felt different. This felt good. This felt aligned with me authentically. And where I am right now feels right for all the reasons we've described of it meets, kind of my values, meets my authenticness, and being a part of a wellness business that is focused on passion and purpose and is led by its people.
And a great way to have the time and space to reflect on everything that you just shared is to go to the hydration room and to get an IV.
That's right.
Because you probably get a little bit of space then to reflect on your heart, your mind, and your gut as you heal them, as you take care of them. To think about what your values are, to think if the organization that you're at aligns with what you want to, like how you want to be known as. I think kind of underneath all this, when it comes to values, really what we're talking about is brand of company, brand of self, which is how you show up, how people perceive you, what they expect of you, and what you expect of yourself. And it's really what I hope people strive for when it comes to their career. I think it's a gift, as you said. It's not something everyone can do, but I think people at least can choose to how they show up. Maybe not exactly how their organization shows up. Maybe they don't have as many options as other people do. But by showing up a certain way with your values as a leader, even if you're not a leader in title, you do end up influencing the environment, the people, and the organization around you. So, Michelle, any final thoughts or words of wisdom, even though you've already given us so much?
No, I think be you. Right at the end of the day, I think you just summed it up beautifully, which is, check in with yourself to the extent that you control the situation that you're in. Show up as you every day and know that's enough. And if it's matching your values, then lean in. And if it's not matching your values, question it.
And be courageous and to question it and to have the conversation or ask the question.
Yep.
So if people want to find out more about Hydration Room or yourself, where can they go, Michelle?
I would love anyone to stop into a hydration room. We have almost 40 locations across Southern California. We're opening our first location in Northern California in a few weeks, July of 2025. And if you'd like to learn about me, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn, Michelle Mendoza on LinkedIn as part of the hydration room.
And I'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes.
Amazing.
So be you, everybody. And that aligns very well with Live Fearlessly. Thank you, Michelle, for your time.
Thank you.
I really do appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Executive Podcast, where we explore what it truly means to be a leader. If you've taken one thing away, make sure to subscribe, share, and most importantly, leave a review. Thanks again, everyone, and see you next time.